Hello, hello. Today will be episode 62, and we'll be taking a good gander at Celia. Don't know why the name escaped me for a moment. But yeah, we're going to look over Celia, and I must admit, I did a whoopsie. I recorded 3 whole episodes, and I had the mute button on the whole time. And as a result, I have lost that audio, which sucks because I had some fantastic rants and dialogue that was all super coherent, but we'll get back to that. So we're looking at the front gate because it looks like the one that's in front of Stormhill, in between Limgraves and Stormhill, made by the Saint and Tree era. And I'm going to be looking at that for a bit. So all of this is, this voice is recorded in post. I've lost all that information, which sucks. But still, it looks like it's from that particular era, and I don't know what the pacing is going to be. I might get through with my points quicker as a result, simply because I just know what to talk about now a little more. But yeah, so that's what we're going to be doing today, is recording in post. But Celia's kind of neat. I like it. It's a neat pocket, and you have to really dig deep. So from the gate, that looks like it's from Limgrave / Stormvale in the Saint and Tree era. We see these pillars and this nice brickwork, right, in the front wall with its archway. And it has these pale bricks that have rot pock marks, and it looks like the stone was quarried from somewhere completely different from where the Saint and Tree era got their stone. Celia seems to have quite a bit going for it. It doesn't seem like it is under the control of the Academy. It seems to be its own unique culture who also discovered sorceries. We see overgrown roots. It's hard to tell if those are a consequence of the rot or if those roots have existed for some time. It looks like they're causing a bit of trouble, so I bet they're a part of the Aeonian bloom and not an outcropping of, say, the Great Tree. Looking over the place, I'm trying to remember what on earth I may have talked about this period of time. But we go through it, and we light the 3 lights to remove the seals. We find that there are unique sorceries that the Celians have concocted, the night sorceries, and I'll look at that in a bit. We also notice that there are phantoms. They can't be frosted or frostbitten, and I bet they can't be bled or poisoned either. And it seems that they're spectral. Those wizards are. There's a standard wizards from the Academy of Raya Lucaria. There's the Twin Sage wizards. There's Lazuli wizards, and there's even nobles there. And they all seem to be spectral, and it's almost like a radiation suit for an ecological disaster. They're protecting themselves from the Scarlet Rot while they loot the place. Their enemies, they should have been colleagues, but it seems that Celia was a competitor of sorts to the Academy of Raya Lucaria. But, yeah, the Aeonian bloom caused by Melania is certainly the largest ecological disaster in the history of Elden Ring, as far as I can tell. Save maybe the Shattering, but the Shattering seemed to affect more the fabric of reality than the environment necessarily. But I guess they're kind of linked intrinsically. But yeah, and God, what all was I talking about? I may have been taking a look at the statue at the far end. Maybe I'll do that in just a moment. Hopefully. There's a statue at the far end of Celia that looks like it's from Leyndell, right? And I'm going to be doing this in a weird order, taking a sip from my drink because I don't actually have to play the game. I just need to record over it. But I'll still do it in a very organic fashion because that's the easiest way I know how to still get the information across. But there is a statue on the far end of Celia. It looks like it's from Leyndell. It has one of their sentinels on it with a sideways mohawk, leaves, a golden spear, you name it. So it makes me wonder, who was Celia allied with? Who were they enemies to? Were they occupied by Leyndell at a later point in time? Who occupied them? Was it Radon? Did Radon come and occupy Celia? He has red hair from his father, Radigan, and he also... Oh, I think we're looking at, the night sorceries here. The Celian sorcerers were assassins, and it is said that they often hunted their fellows, assuming fellow sorcerers. Perhaps not necessarily those from Celia, but perhaps from the Academy. Below Celia, the eternal city of Necron sleeps. This sorcery originates from the maidens of that place. All right, this is jogging my memory a little bit. So we know that there's Celia, we know that there's the Academy and some influence there, and it seems like not the friendliest, because once the Celians are gone, the Academy comes and loots the place with their ecological disaster phantom suits. Yeah, whether it's an enchantment or just an illusion like projection, I couldn't tell you. But the Celians are here. They have some relationship with the Academy. They have some relationship with Langdell, good or bad, hard to say. And they must have some sort of tie to Radon, since he came to this land, it seems like, in part, to learn gravity magic. There seems to be a good deal more gravity magic here than anywhere else. And we also found, of course, that Alabaster Lord behind Caria Manor, which may have even been Radon's teacher later imprisoned. Okay, good. I'm zooming in on the statue now. So there's the Langdell statue of the Golden Order, the Sentinel. And I like to think of it as like a Statue of Liberty-like deal, that maybe they might have been friends. Maybe Celia was absorbed by the Golden Order, and maybe that's what put them at odds with their neighbors. Hard to say. But Radon definitely came to Celia at some point, and either he conquered it, or maybe he came here to study magic. It's hard to say, given his background of being the child of Renala and Radigan, and having learned so much about magic probably in that respect. Even though Ronnie inherited the estate, he probably needed to go out in the world and earn his own living of sorts. So I think here I pull out the meteorite sorcery. Yeah, one of the glintstone sorceries that manipulates gravitational forces. This sorcery originates from the Onyx lords who had skin of stone. I go so fast, I have to read it quick. A gravitational technique studied by the young Radon. Yeah, both say that. My pacing's going to be all over the place, and you'll just have to forgive me, dear viewer. But, yeah, so the Redmanes, they are definitely a sign of Radigan and his red hair, much like Radon is with his red hair, but they also have a lot of lion iconography at the same time. Here I'm just looking at things that relate to Celia and trying to piece things together, but the main thing I wanted to harp on is that Radon is the child of Radigan, who has a red flowing hair, and Renala. So sorcery background, fundamentalist incantation background, as well as father who is a chief aspect of the Golden Order, it seems. And he seems to have blended those ideas, because the Redmane lion is all over the surcoats of the soldiers, it's all over the icons of the Redmane knights and their soldiers, and even their smaller foot soldiers seem to have ties to that iconography. And so I rather like that Radon is a blend of things, right? We don't get to see his faith necessarily, if he had faith in the Golden Order, or if he really just did his own thing and just thought Godfrey was super cool. But he seems to focus himself on strength as well as wisdom in good portion. And a lot of, at least Gideon Ofnir references Radon as being the strongest or the most fearsome of the demigods. And we never get to see Radon, unfortunately, at full tilt. We get to see him post-Millennia wimping out and causing an ecological disaster, because that's the kind of woman she is, you know. Sore loser, went with the nuclear option. That's what we have here in Celia. Exciting as that is. But let's see. What else might I have harped on? I think that's it. I think I did it faster here than I did in game when I first recorded it, but had my mic muted and lost all that tasty footage. So I think I'm about ready to leave. But man, do I do some waltzing back and forth. I think I'm here for about 8 minutes. Or maybe 9 minutes even. Who knows? It seems a little longer than that. Yeah, just taking a look around. Goodness me. The rant was pretty good. I liked it. Oh, I forgot to mention the Nox. We run into the Nox briefly, just two of them. A Swordstress, I believe, and a Monk. They were the boss fight at the end of Celia. We don't know what their tie-in is just yet. We also don't know what the tie-in is necessarily with Necron, which is beneath Celia. One of the item descriptions goes over that, I believe. I think it was the Night Maiden's Mist goes over that. Necron is basically the Eternal City is directly below Celia. Now, we see glintstone scattered around Celia, but it doesn't look like there's any organic patches. That could have just been stuff looted by the Academy of Rea Lucaria. But they might have had a reservoir beneath it. Who knows? There must have been a reason that the Celians would want to be there. But so Celia is this weird focal point between a lot of different cultures. Those of Lanedell, the Academy of Rea Lucaria, even the Carians. They have Radon has ties to the place through his gravitational magic, and so on and so forth. Here I'm fighting some of the weird fleshy bats. They drop a big golden rune upon death. And while the money is nice if you need it, I usually avoid these kinds of enemies. I'm just showing them off for now. I should have fought them back in Liurnia and as well as Limgrave. No, not Limgrave, Weeping Peninsula. Because there's one in the southern portion of the Weeping Peninsula, south of the Erd Tree, the minor Erd Tree. But, and then there's another one in the western part of Liurnia, along the coast in some trees, and I think amongst some ruins even, but mostly hidden amongst the trees. And so, and then there's going to be another one that we'll run into in the precipice on the northern portion of Liurnia when we return. And all of them are singing Latin, strangely enough, and the Latin is a prayer specifically about it seems that the deity of this world, and why is he so angry? Why has he forsaken them? And I should probably get the text for that, and I probably will when we get to that portion. But just giving little lore tidbits as we are fighting these bats here. And we see gear scattered across the place. There are banished knight halberds and the modeled shields of the exiled soldiers. So, and we've seen those in relation to Godric. So it seems interesting that his exiled soldiers might be this far. Now, is that, of course, he the only faction who has banished knights as well as exiled soldiers? No, but he's the closest that we know of at this point in time. So he may have led some sort of expedition in this direction. Now, what happened to that expedition, we don't know exactly, but we see their weapons scattered about. Now, could they have been from an older conflict? Absolutely. We fought Commander O'Neill, I believe, in an earlier episode. That firebomb killing two at once feels nice. We fought Commander O'Neill in an earlier episode, and he is wearing an outfit that is fairly close to a banished knight. He's almost like a banished commander, right? He's wearing fancier variant of their armor by the looks of it. So maybe they were banished knights who were tied to Commander O'Neill. And Commander O'Neill, of course, during his fight, he does summon exiled soldiers of the smaller variety, first with crossbows, and then the larger variety later in his fight with big axes. So, for all we know, the banished knights, including Commander O'Neill, as well as the exiled soldiers, maybe they followed Radon and were a part of his conflict, right? And it seems to make more sense that they were following Radon. Okay. So up here on the cliff, we get to see the arches down below in the great desert beach that's on the far edge of Caelid. And this is significant because the intro to all my videos is one of those arches. Sieghelm standing by one. I'm not wearing the robe anymore, but maybe I will when I get there. Who knows? But I wanted to give a shout out to a Twitter user by the name of 8Tyan, Tyan, and then, 8 spelled out, the number spelled out. 8Tyan, go give him a follow on Twitter. He drew the intro and outro art for these episodes. I'm thankful to him. He's been a longtime friend, and he draws fun art. More immediate gratification than watching a playthrough. Honestly, if you're here for episode 62 and I'm giving this shout out this late, that feels a bit off. I probably shouldn't have waited so long to give him a shout out, but I only found out about his Twitter recently. He's reaching out. Both of us understand how cancerous the site it is, and we want to spend as little time as possible, but I will hopefully in the coming days figure out how to make my Twitter a bot that will post updates on my videos, as well as other important things to come. So, here I'm showing off Rock Blaster, poorly. I thought there would be an invisible guy in the corner. Foreknowledge, that's how it goes. But here we have the Lazuli wizards trying to mess me up. And it's funny that they're posted up here and they're invisible, right? Now, it seems that stealth is a sign of the night sorceries, which is what the Celians practiced. But these are academy wizards. The Lazuli Conspectus specifically being wizards that studied Carian magic, invented and pioneered by the Carians. There I'm showing off Rock Blaster. It's okay. You can hold it for a long time if you have mana and stamina, but whatever. And then we saw another regular academy sorcerer. So were these sorcerers who discovered Celian magic after looting the town and were practicing it? Kind of a funny place to go practice it. Or perhaps are they reanimated enemies? Do the Celians have some sort of carrion magic and they're reanimating their foes to do their bidding? That doesn't make as much sense as a theory because they have nobles scouring the remains of the town of Celia for whatever they can find. There's the skull in the distance on the cliff. You get to see it briefly. I try to see it again later and I'm on the wrong side of it, so if you need to see it, go pan back in the footage. Here again, I try out Rock Blaster. Horrible idea. I should have let go as soon as it started to tick on him, but I didn't, and so that's one of the dangers, is Rock Blaster doesn't have Hyper Armor. It has whatever poise you have, and it's one of those spells that has that. If they wanted to make Rock Blaster great, which I doubt it, it's not popular. I don't think there's really demand for making it great. They would give it Hyper Armor. It needs just a smidge. You know, something. Heck, make it so it eats up mana if you get hit. I don't know, something. That'd be kind of neat, right? Make it a shield. Now, it doesn't need that. Rock Blaster is supposed to be a sorcery meant for drilling and mining in the earth for glintstones. But I digress. Looking at the body here, that is a headpiece we can get. But it's interesting that it's a burned body, and it's a unique corpse to find an item on. We don't see many like that. Eternal Darkness. So Eternal Darkness is a rather neat spell. On my first playthrough, I used it as soon as I found it as a counter wizard spell because the homing projectile attacks, Rain of Stars, not Rain of Stars, Star Shower? I forget what it's called. But the spells that shoot in a 3, 6, or 12 burst or whatever that later tier version is, they had really strong homing when the game first came out, especially the third variant. And this was a good counter to it. So originally, a lost sorcery of the Eternal City, the despair that brought about its ruin made manifest. Forbidden sorcery of Celia, town of sorcery, right? So interesting that it is a spell of Celia, but it is forbidden, to say the least. So it seems interesting that they concocted the spell, but they found it heretical to a degree. Forbidden. But it has ties to the Eternal City, and there was some great loss that happened there. So much so that the despair either inspired the spell or was the fuel for it. I guess there's not much of a difference in that. It seems that either the fall brought about some knowledge that was obscured, and its recollection is forbidden, or perhaps the sorrow brought about by the spell inspired someone to craft it. But the idea that a sorcerer would want to create a black hole that could absorb all other spells is a very neat concept, I think. Especially as far as the cosmos goes and how spells actually have a tie to the stars and astrology and the moon and celestial objects in motion. It's all neat stuff to me. It's a little more flavorful than sorceries have been in previous Souls games, where it's like, oh, you're focusing your soul to create a bullet. You point the catalyst and you shoot. Bang. But the idea that it's the study of stars to fling rocks at high velocities, that's cool. I'm with that. I'm all for it. And it looks prettier in this game than it has in any of the previous games. Sorceries kind of looked lame in earlier installments in the Soul series. So here I am, switching out the spells. I keep the War Crime spell because Night Maiden's Mist, fantastic spell. Lots of uses. Lots of damage, cheap damage. I actually like it in PvP, honestly. I think that is a great time to use it. You can flush people out of rooms that they're hiding in. It can hurt people a little bit through walls. It's area control. It's really good and cheap area control. You can arc it. Charging up makes the area effect larger. Yes, this bowl, this half bowl. I forgot what this instrument was called. It's not an astrolabe, it's something else, right? But it's this half bowl. It has the phases of the moon on it, but it acts like a basin for collecting amber of the stars. Starlight shards, as we know them. So it kind of works in the same way that the basins do under minor Erd trees and the Erd tree itself, collecting that sap that crystallizes into magical tears, but just the cosmos. Somehow it can collect residue of the stars. So here we have a bunch of skeletons, and I switched to the mace with the sacred blade because it chunks and you don't have to confirm your kills. Why not? And I wanted to amend my theory on the shields that these guys have, because the shield depicts a sun glowing above a city. And I think the first time I brought it up, I mentioned that it must have been Lanedale, and that maybe in an earlier era that the Erd Tree was so bright as to be like the sun, and that's just the symbol they use. But then again, these gravestones are not from a culture like Lanedale. They are not Erd Tree buried. They are just standard gravestone buried. And so it makes me think that maybe it's from a much older culture that had some great city and it had some form of sun worship. And that shield is a remnant of that. What culture that is, I couldn't tie it to anything. I couldn't confirm it as the Satan Tree era with any amount of confidence, or any other culture for that matter. It seems to be just a little snippet of a culture. Up the hill here we see a battle mage, big old club and huge staff. He's got the gavel. He can destroy stuff with it. It's interesting to note that he's physically larger than the other wizards. And I don't know if that's just to show off his power level, or if somehow wizards figured out some sort of growth serum to make their nerds more imposing. Couldn't tell you. But still, he's got that stone club, which is arguably the best small hammer in the game. Hits fast, it has its own unique attack pattern, a little bit better than the horizontal sweeps you get with the other maces. So that's a good one. Great strength scaling. If you need to farm it, here's a guy you could farm it from. That's relatively close to a side grace. Not that convenient, but I'm not thinking of one that's more convenient than that one at this point in time. I think he can drop the stone club. I probably should have farmed it for the episode. I completely forgot. But that's okay. I'll get a stone club at some point, a future episode. Probably as far out as episode 65. Probably. I need to reorganize my inventory because we get a couple more weapons by then. I just want to hold too many weapons. I like having a repertoire, a huge repertoire, but because it's a lot of not only utility but variety. I like mixing up my playstyle and having lots of different options. But this is definitely a place and time that we want to use the big bonk. The big bonk is excellent. I slap walls because I don't remember if there's any extra illusory walls with side areas, but gotta watch out for those. It's kind of funny. I have a friend who watches the channel and the videos, and he's trying to catch up, and he's recently confided in me that ever since watching my channel in a good amount, he is starting to get recommendations from other up-and-coming Souls YouTubers, which is funny to me that I'm a gateway of sorts to other people getting recommendations from other small-time YouTubers. I should probably keep an eye out. It's always been a pastime of this friend of mine and myself, is finding small YouTube channels under 100k subscribers and just like predicting which ones will explode. And we've had moderate success in doing so. But you can kind of tell the telltale signs of who is willing to put in the time, who has content that could catch on to a low common denominator, things like that. But here we have a crystal cavern, and it is full of glintstone. And that's important because Celia didn't seem to have a natural reservoir of glintstone that we could see. The Academy of Raya Lucaria had a huge one that we saw all around the lake. There's shards growing all over the place, as well as underneath Raya Lucaria. Under Raya Lucaria, right, where we saw the big old wheel turning that works as an elevator, as well as the abductor virgin in the base of the Academy. We saw big patches of glintstone growing. It looks like they had operation there to kind of excavate some of that and to use it for their own purposes. But deep underneath the Academy of Raya Lucaria, underground, but above the Lake of Rot that we saw when we were going through the Ansel River, we saw a huge outcrop of glintstone growing up from the cave ceiling. Growing down from the cave ceiling, I should say. So it seems important that Celia, despite being much smaller than the Academy of Raya Lucaria and the region around it, they have their own little mine here, well hidden, and it's a good source of glintstone. Now, I wish we knew the difference between purple and blue glintstone. Is blue glintstone stuff that people have started using? Is purple the natural stuff? We've also seen blue. Or is purple just dulled and lost its luster and maybe its power? Couldn't say. Because it seems that the teal-y blue stuff seems to have a little more life to it, a little more power. So I couldn't tell you which is which or for what purpose. But we use the blue stuff most often, the blue-teal stuff. Other thoughts while we are here. Yeah, I'm shooting at the Revenant. I'm taking the easy way. I don't like Revenants. They got bare hands. They fling them all over the place. You can't parry them. Miserable. Hate fighting them. I don't have any heal magic, so I can't dunk on him that way. But I can shoot him with a big old ballista and make his life miserable on his way out. So why not? That seems like the thing to do, of course. There we go. We finish him off there. Excellent. I can switch my weapon and be... Well, I guess I'm not indecisive here about what I ought to wield, but... So now you can continue through the place like normal. It's important to note that outside, there was not only an illusory wall protecting this place, but a battle mage, right? Now, the battle mage doesn't seem like a holdover from Celia defending their precious Dr. Glintstone. That seems silly. The Glintstone, they don't have the manpower to probably excavate it. They have Glintstone way closer to the Academy for their needs. And they're probably going through Celia not for just raw lumps of Glintstone, but more likely for knowledge, wisdom, and other things that are more valuable. Artifacts of magic. Maybe Glintstone forged weapons or some such. I mean, we did find Moonveil, which is a very notable katana of wizard Celian make. And so it seems that these miners might have been a holdover from Celia. We don't see their interaction with any wizards, so it's hard to say if they are united. But there's a wizard outside and an illusory wall to keep it safe. And there must be a reason for that, if not the glintstone itself, right? I doubt they need the glintstone that bad. And the miners here seem lethargic and like they haven't been put to work in some time, like their own foreman is gone. So you're saying there's a vacancy that I can apply for the job. We bash in some snails, crystal snails. I don't think we've seen any regular variety snails yet, so it makes me wonder what sort of crystalline monstrosities appear, not only in the lands between, but outside the lands between. There's got to be glintstone out there too, right? It's not like stars just have their residue conglomerate only in the lands between. That seems unrealistic or improbable. Unrealistic. What am I even talking about? So here we find a seal guarding something, and it seems that our confirmation that the battle mage outside and not the wizard inside was protecting something. And it seems that we need a key, a special glintstone key, much like the key that we used to enter Rea Lucaria, as Rea Lucaria was also protected by one of those seals. Now we can look where the Revenant was, pick up some stimulating boluses, a golden rune, lost ashes of war, and strangely enough, a Ghost Glovewort 4 dropped off of the Revenant, which I didn't know they could drop. So I learned something today. I learned a good amount of things during these episodes. I tried to slow down my pacing and pay more attention and talk about it, which will hopefully be easier now that I've already talked through these episodes but mistakenly didn't record the audio, and so this is my second pass at talking about the lore of the land of the game and what's going on screen. But we have a fun part coming up. A very fun part. It's always a good feeling when you defeat a boss that otherwise is a bit intimidating to you. And that's one of the things I really prize in these Souls games, is that even though you may be experienced, even though the game might become a little bit routine as you're going through it, the familiarity and the knowledge base helps considerably in the bosses, but there's some bosses that are still tough, especially if you only play once in a while and you get rusty, like I do. That's one of the things that kills me about PvP, is that I'm splitting my time between recording this Lorethrough, which is most of it, and then also recording PvP and trying to get good clips and have some fun with that. And I find I get rusty at the PvP when I only do the PvE, and then the PvE kind of, you're used to a tight gameplay experience. Well, internet can happen when you're playing online, so there's goods and bads. I give these boys the old slap. I don't know why. I thought I had killed the guy on the right, the Lazuli sorcerer, but I totally did not in my first go at it. I can see now in retrospect, of course, I did not kill him. And just continued on and got blasted in the face by a shotgun worth of glintstone shards. Right to the face, right to the kisser. Not fun. Hits really hard for them. I've never gotten that spell to hit that hard on another player, let alone another enemy. It doesn't feel like a very good spell. I should probably play with it more and see if I can get it to be good. Maybe I'll have a character who uses unusual sorceries and tries to get them to work. All right, so we have a spirit that wields round crystalline blades, both big and small. Its sturdy body itself, hewn from crystal long ago, is hard enough to blunt its opponent's blades, but blows from bludgeoning weapons can shatter it easily. Crystallians. They're made of crystal. Give them the old hammer. Pretty self-explanatory. Seems like it would be a pretty good summon for all intents and purposes. It takes like 101 FP, so not too expensive. And, well, as long as they're not being hit by blunt, they can be really resilient, do a lot of harassment. And that particular one has a ranged option. So, very good. I forget what I'm peeking in here for. Probably to see if there's any items that I might have missed. And it looks like there's a one. So, might as well. Crystal darts. Budding cave moss. Number 15. Burger King foot lettuce. So, moving down the chasm here. Not sure what else I ought to talk about. There's not a whole lot in lore, but this is a deep cavern. Lots of glintstone. Horrible slug snail monsters latching onto the ceiling. What are I showing off there in the stats? Curious. Either way, it's not crunch proof, so give them the wallop. It's not too much of an issue. But for this upcoming fight, oh, got both. This upcoming fight, I recommend a parry tool and a blunt weapon. First and foremost. It's not the worst fight in the world. I put on the Axe Talisman to help my power attacks, because power attacks can help considerably. And I drink the Wondrous Physic. Give myself that magic damage boost that I forget to use for the first part of the fight. As well as... I think I put the Preserving Boluses on my bar, because I know what's ahead. Rot-infused Crystallians, all the way here. Almost like they were sealed away for some reason, and the rot still got to them through the land. It's a little bit of a shaky start, but I quickly fix it. Drink some tasty flask, get ready. Thankfully, the spear-wielding Crystallian has a very predictable pattern. It's a little choppy, but that if you can outdistance them to where they do the repeated thrust attack, like that, that is parry bait. It does a very logical motion. It does it repeatedly, so you can just watch it and just kind of feel for the timing. It feels like one of the more easy to parry moves in the game, probably because of its repetition. It can help you kind of count off the timing in your head and then get within range when absolutely necessary. But the interesting thing about these Crystallians is that they don't all focus you at once necessarily. There's Lutel getting melted off to the side, buying me time as necessary. I remember the Magic Scholar's armament. And here we give him the old power attack, which hits for a good chunk of damage, even though it doesn't stumble on the first hit. It only takes like 2 power attacks to adequately break their posture. Fully charged power attacks with the Axe Talisman, I should say. But we deal with this Crystallian. Interesting to note that they're wearing a little bit of cloth. They don't seem like they'd have a purpose for that, but maybe they have a symbolic use for it. Or maybe it's a gift from some humans and their interaction. During a randomizer I was playing with some friends of mine, we had these triple Crystallians appear in a very early Limgrave dungeon, and they wiped the floor with us. They inflict rot damage. I didn't have a good parry shield, let alone a blunt weapon. It was just a lot. We died pretty easily. We came back later and killed it, and it gave next to no money. It dropped like a single rune arc or something worthless like that as far as boss fights go. And it was just this tremendous effort for little to no reward, which I thought was funny. They are a really mean fight, but if you show up with a blunt weapon, a parry tool, and some preserving boluses, and a distraction, it's not too bad. Pretty reasonable. Even on your own, it's not that unreasonable, though the time Lutel buys you is fantastic, or whatever summon you decide to bring. So here we're looking at the Crystal Barrage briefly. I think I'm naming off the spells that you could hold and they just keep casting. So the Crystal Blast there, the Meteorite, the Rock Blaster of course does that as well, and now Crystal Torrent are all spells that you hold down the button and they just keep channeling. So let's look at the description here for Crystal Torrent. When the Gunches of the Past, decide to tab over to it, couldn't imagine what I was talking about at that very moment. Such a shame. Suppose I could talk about whatever, but I will soon be interrupted by whatever's going on screen. This is such a funny way of doing the episode, honestly. All right, Crystal Torrent. The wrath of the Crystallians encapsulated in sorcery. Each shard is of substantial size, making every stray blow capable of inflicting a severe wound. Is it really? No. Crystal Torrent doesn't hit too hard. It's really inaccurate. It can't keep shooting. So sustained fire is where it gets its damage. Accuracy by volume kind of methodology. It can be useful. The nice thing is that you turn a little bit while firing it. And so if your target is moving, I think you'll follow them a little bit within like maybe a 45 or 60 degree window in front of you. You turn a bit. It's not like other sorceries that you channel, especially a notable late game one Commodore, where you channel it and you fire this big Kamehameha beam and you can't turn it, and it's just stuck in that position, eating a whole ton of resources, stamina as well as mana. But here I try to show off the side of the skull. We can't really see it. Hopefully you saw it earlier in the episode, where it would have been much easier to see it. But I digress. We see this huge rock mound, and we see that wing, that insidious wing, and that is a hint for next time. Watch episode 63. You'll have a good time. We got to find out what that stupid wing's about. Look how big it is. That's ridiculous. It makes the Erd tree look small. Not really, but you get the point. But thank you for joining me. It's been fun re-recording the voice lines, and I'll be doing it for the next two. I'll see you later, and bye-bye.